Hi, David.
Hi, Sarah.
I want to ask you a question about highly sensitive people. There are people who we talk about as being oversensitive, and I'm sure I've had times in my life when I've been oversensitive. We talk about being hypersensitive, and then nowadays we talk a lot about people being empaths or highly empathic. And we also talk a lot about intuition and very intuitive people. And there's an overlap, but I think it would be really interesting if we could just pull all of these apart a little bit and see where we're talking about the same thing and where there are nuances of meaning in these different descriptions.
We have so many nuances to talk about, but we're just going to do a few little broad spectrum nuances just to start with. So let's start with just highly sensitive people and oversensitive, and basically anything that's in that sensitive area that you may diagnose yourself. And sometimes, as we discussed before, a lot of people don't really realize how highly sensitive they are until we get down to the nitty gritty and just analyze what's going on. So the biggest thing is that when you're highly sensitive, you work completely differently than just the average person. So when you're highly sensitive, and I know this subject inside and out because I've been so highly sensitive since I've been a child. And when you're highly sensitive, first cab off the rank that we need to discuss is that a highly sensitive person does something that most people tend to forget about, and that's your spirit body. So we have an actual spirit body that does stuff, and it does so much. It's like this massive, formidable part, and it's the part that makes us formidable. So, but your spirit body talks on very subtle wavelengths. So your physical body is ultra loud. It's almost it, and also remembering that your physical body can be quite not just loud but quite abusive, passive aggressive, and it wants attention all the time, and it wants to drown out basically the um, the subtle energy so that you don't look at it in a way, basically. So it makes that. So, but what happens is it's always you can, when you're highly sensitive, it'll never get drowned out. So what happens is we go to our subtle energy, and then that picks up a lot of information from our spirit. Then when it'll switch straight over to the very loud physical, but in between certain times when we relax and things are a little bit quieter, we add a component of consciousness in between. And your consciousness is basically the part that really blends everything together, because you've got consciousness in your spirit body, and you do have a consciousness that is sort of quite individual as a self-conscious. And we have to make sure that we use a self-conscious, not like one that is surrounded around you, because there's also like a consciousness that we can pick up from. It's like a community consciousness, if you like. And then we have this physical body over here, but in what happens is we've got all these transitions, and that's why we sort of go really highly oversensitive or lowly sensitive, because 1 minute we're listening to this beautiful spirit body that tells you a lot more and uses your intuition and instinct quite a lot, a little bit of consciousness, especially when it starts to relax. And then it sends the message over to the physical. But sometimes it's sort of, we don't sort of get that, we don't, we don't get the actual message sent. It's sort of like we either go, we pick up and we analyze what's going on in the spirit body, then we go straight to the physical. And it's like two different worlds. And as you may have noticed, they don't actually coordinate and they don't collate. And then when we're highly sensitive too, you're picking up a totally different version, and it's a different language. So one, your spirit bodies has a language, and your physical body has a language, and the two just, it's like you need an interpreter, and that's what your consciousness does. Because
Would you say that people who are not really highly sensitive are people who are just very much located in their physical body and they don't really
yeah,
listen, they don't have much access to
yeah,
the spirit body, and highly
no,
sensitive people have
no,
both more active?
they don't. But it's your spirit body that, for want of a better description, it's your bullshit your detector. You know, when it picks it picks up what is really going on, because your spirit body uses the whole. If you've ever heard the term whole collective consciousness, um, because your spirit body doesn't run just on emotions and feelings. It runs on a totally different body. It runs on sensing.
Yes, and
And
many people
sensing,
now are aware of sensing. It's
yeah,
like they know
sensing,
that they're sensing. They have almost like a different language
yeah,
of
that's right.
knowing things and of assessing things. And people sense resonance a lot. It's a very
That's
common
right.
description. And it's you're using a different part of you. And it's not just your physical body. People sometimes teach you to feel everything in your body, but the stuff that you sense around you is you can't describe it in pure physical language. That's what you're talking about,
No,
isn't it?
you can't. And it you can't describe it, because it's indescribable a lot of the times, because you're using your intuition and your instinct. And the other thing is, your physical body relates more just on high resonance. So, and most things are processed with your physical body, of course, are processed in your head. Um, but whereas your spirit body, um, you use your whole entire body. It's like when you meet somebody for the very first time, what everybody does is they scan, and they, because everybody's on alert all the time, really, and your body goes out and it scans everybody from head to toe. Is that person a decent person? Is that person honest? And it goes through all the different things, because we're going through that person to see if you can trust that person a little bit. And that one we get pretty close to. Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone has a spirit body and it just functions that they're
Yeah.
going to, some people are going to use it a lot, but the physical body's still very much there, and that's why it
Yeah.
can sometimes overwhelm. Some people don't use it so much and they're more
No,
physically located, they experience everything in a very physical way. But we all have this ability at some
we do.
level to sense.
We do. And it's, as we go through life, and if we think of what's gone on even with our parents, and what's gone on when we're very small, then that depends whether we're going to actually detune lots and lots of different senses. And sometimes it's a bit like asking your foot to tell you what your ear's telling you. You know what I mean? It
So it's
doesn't
like
all
you've
provide.
switched off a whole lot of senses, and so you can't use them.
Yeah,
So you're now using the wrong senses to try to get the
yeah,
information that you're looking for, but you don't have everything turned on.
exactly. And when I look through a person, what happens is, um, everybody looks a little bit like a barcode. So when I look through, they and I look through, they got all these blockages here, there, and everywhere, which means there's like a little cycle. So your whole senses are meant to make whole cycles right around your entire body. So when I look at somebody and I see those little like barcodes, I know that that's exactly what, that's as far as one sense goes, and it does like a little loop, and
It's like a
it just,
short circuit in a way.
it is a short circuit. That's what I like it to, because it's just like an electrical board. And that part that, is, it's just on repeat. So it's like when people say, why can't you think about this in a different way? It's because that's the way you're wired. You're in these repeat cycles. So when we go through and we teach people how to use the whole of their body to start with, in their spirit body, all of a sudden we can actually use somebody's consciousness. And as soon as they do that, we've got this big missing piece. And it is so fundamentally, and when I found it, I was pretty damn excited because it's like you get, when you find this connective consciousness, basically it's a way of bringing all your spirit energy messages, or the ones that really, really matter, your intuition and your instinct, because they all start there. It allows you to use different levels of consciousness all together exactly at the same time. And we process it all through your physical body. So all these different bodies are all collating and they're all talking at the same time.
Oh, so you feel
So we
like
have
one
all this,
person instead of feeling like you're
yeah,
lots and lots of people at the same
yeah,
time.
that's right. And because, and that's why, and this is one of the biggest reasons, because highly sensitive people feel like you don't belong here. It's like, God, I'm from bloody Mars or somewhere, you know? It's like nothing relates. But when you turn this on, it's like all of a sudden, um, your head becomes quiet. And I've worked with a few scientists on this, and it's on the website because we've done some scientific tests with it. And for the scientists who did it, it was like they were able to do so much more. It's like in 2 weeks, they were basically doing what they did in a month,
Yep, I totally
because you're
understand that.
able to process so much information, and it's it's fun, and it's so strange. Honestly, it is so strange, because when you've got all those little loops going on, your head's busy, but it's not doing anything. It's just recycle, 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 and it's all this crap,
Yeah.
just recycling, recycling, and and it's really funny when I talk to people and I say, "How quiet's your head?" And they say, "Oh, it's absolutely quiet." And I said, then we start to talk about, how do you feel? And I said, well, it's bloody fantastic, because they can actually hear themselves, and you're not. That's when you can change things.
Yeah.
That's when you can get rid of all these crappy old habits, because you're using what you have, and that's a massive thing.
So
Just to be
really,
able to use this.
what we're saying is that it's actually there's a real advantage in being highly sensitive if you can make all of those bodies work together. The experience that most people have is that they're not working together, in which case there's a lot of conflict actually and kind of missing links inside you, which is no wonder that it's such an unpleasant experience. But what I want to look at is, we talk sometimes about people being hypersensitive or oversensitive. Now, I think that's quite often emotional, actually. It often just means that they tend to react emotionally a lot. But I'm sure that it connects in with this, because they probably are highly sensitive, really. But maybe there are too many loops going on. Can you tell us a little bit about oversensitive and hypersensitive?
Okay, this is such a massive, massive, and we're going to almost go straight into something that people don't really, really realize that's going on. Okay, so for donkey's years now, I mean, since I was a child, I can see energy, and it is a bonus. Okay, and that's basically how I found it. But what happens is, when we detune, we're all aware that if you imagine like your everyday conscious, it gets pushed down to a subconscious or completely unconscious. Yeah. So as this energy gets pushed down, information gets pushed down, we just assume that everything that happens just sits deeper inside us. But that's the biggest thing. It doesn't. And it's a myth, because I can see this crap. And when I change people, they change ultra, ultra quickly. So what happens is, as this energy goes deep inside you, it splits. And some of your energy, firstly, your spirit energy and consciousness, is all sitting out here. And it's quite weird to think that a lot of you is sitting out here, but it is.
And that makes you feel
But
really
it's,
disconnected, doesn't it?
that's right. So if you imagine you're just walking around, so as you detune others people's energy, it's a bit like you're a big sieve. Okay, just imagine you're a big sieve and you're sucking up the information about everybody else, which you think is you, and it's not. It's got nothing to damn well do with you. But because part of you has gone out, it's just like, as it's like, as we give and give and give, if we keep on giving of ourselves, it gets to the point we've got nothing left. Get quite depleted. Yeah.
So, in a way, because part of ourselves is outside, we try to make up for what's missing by
We
filling
do.
it up, but we fill it up with stuff that belongs to other people. It doesn't even belong to us. And that doesn't make us feel better. It actually makes us feel even worse. We're already disconnected, and now we're
And that,
full of other people's crap.
yeah. And you've got all this stuff that is sitting out here. And imagine if there's bits of you sitting out here, how easy is it for all this to be manipulated, pushed around, or just sensed? I mean, you're sensing stuff that's sitting out here, and it's like, whoa, you got to pick it up. Just think of all the stuff that you've been in, like when you're in a, even when you're in school,
No.
and all that stuff can shut you down, turn you down, and you just want to, oh, I don't want to go outside. It's like it drives you nuts.
And so it's that kind of getting driven nuts that ends up with some people becoming oversensitive or hypersensitive. Because, first of all, they haven't got all their faculties really. They haven't got that alignment of their spirit body and their physical body talking to each other. And so they just produce kind of, they just react emotionally because they're, in a way, they're lost. Part of themselves is lost.
That's right. And the biggest thing is it's creative people who use their spirit body, and because that's your intuition and your instinct. But they're the ones who sometimes the most affected, like, artists and, singers and all like that. They're highly sensitive people, but sometimes they're oversensitive. And especially if that's why a lot of people take and they become quite addictive to certain things just to try and not feel all this crap that's just sitting out here. So it just gives us a chance to be more normal.
Yes, absolutely.
And
And to feel
that's really,
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just note, then you start to notice all the good stuff. Like, it's like honestly, because sometimes you can miss all the really important stuff, like just when you touch your partner and it feels good and you pass that message on, or you actually, when your partner comes up and they just say, "Hi, darling," it doesn't annoy you, because if you're highly sensitive, your partner could be wanting to just pass on some love. And as soon as you feel their energy, it's like, oh, he's pissing me off. And it's because they could almost have a little bit of crap that they've dragged in too. And you think it's him, but it's not. It's he's been at work, or she's been at work in this really busy environment, drags it all in, and it just affects you so much. So it's just about knowing that there's a lot of different ways to use our spirit energy, our consciousness, and our physical bodies, and just basically recalibrate them.
So another group that
Mm-hmm.
let's also bring into this highly sensitive category and see how that fits. People who are empaths or highly empathic. We talk a lot about that these days, and that ability to feel what other people are feeling, which personally I don't usually want to feel what other people are feeling, at least not in that way, because I don't really want to be feeling all their stuff. So what's going on there? And what's a good way of being empathic, and perhaps a not so healthy way of being
So
empathic?
I've worked with loads and loads of doctors and basically the medical fraternity, because they're prime targets for being burnout. So what happens is we have we all channel energy all the way around our body, and our empathic body is basically a form of channeling. Okay, so what we do is, what happens with highly empathic people, it's like having your empathy comes out and it sits out here. It's just basically sitting way ways out. So it's basically because we care for people, but sometimes we forget to even care for ourselves. It's like you're really happy when you're helping everybody else, and not so happy when you're helping yourself. And it also has the undesired effect that it can also make it very hard for you to receive. So highly empathic people are very, I mean, they're happy as a clam when it comes to Christmas, but on their birthday, they're absolutely almost going to run away. Leave me alone. I don't want to know anything about it because you're receiving. But when you're also highly empathic, you're going way over, and basically you're exhausting yourself in a lot of ways because you can't turn the filter off. It's just like, I've got to help, I've got to help. It's like, can I help you, can I help you, can I help you? And when you bring these empathic bodies back in, it just gives you a chance to just it's exactly the same as I said before. You become a lot quieter. You actually notice that, I liken it to, there's a movie of you going on, right? But before, when your empathic body's out here, it's like you're an extra. You hardly even get to go in your own movie. So when you start to bring certain bodies back, it's like you get to actually be in your movie. Whereas, and say I call the movie your life, you know. But before, you're not even starring in your own movie.
You're actually in other people's movies, but you don't have a
You're in
starring
other
role in
people's
their
movies,
movie.
exactly, and you're just contributing, 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 and then you get completely and utterly burnt out.
So in a way, somebody who's empathic, it's like when you talk about those bodies are their sensing, some of their sensing mechanisms, if you like.
Yep.
It's like they're overextended, their boundaries are far too wide, so they're out in
Uh,
other spaces, and therefore they're sensing things that aren't them, but they think it's them because it feels like it's part of them. In fact, their boundaries are too wide, and when they come back in, they can use that sensing ability, but use it in a healthy way rather than an
right.
unhealthy way. It doesn't turn it off, it makes it more
And
concentrated and effective.
that's why, unfortunately, some people think they're more broken than they are, and they really aren't that broken as they might think. It's like, it's just, we're just detuned and a little bit unhealthy in some part of us, and we bring it back in, and hey, presto, bang, we're off to the races. You know, we start to learn that there's a more efficient way of working, and that's what we should be doing. You know, we've got our own life to live, and then we find that we can be more resourceful, and it makes you quite um, formidable in a way, because you don't overreact and over respond to everybody else. So it helps you see what is almost like a greater latitude of what's actually going on. So it's like there's a problem going on, and you just bang, honestly, half the time you can see it when nobody else can see it, because it's not right in front of you. It's something sitting here or there, and bang, you fix it.
So,
But
because I notice some people, their empathic ability is something that they very much value. They feel that it's really good to be able to feel people, but they suffer a lot from it. What we're really, and they're sometimes scared that they might lose it. So, what we're saying is
well,
actually, when you do it the right way, you're not going to lose something. You're going to gain something, and that ability is going to become stronger, but it's going to be in the right place.
exactly. And when you do retune, you find an easy way of helping everybody rather than at the detriment of yourself.
Without giving yourself away.
Yeah, and then you can be a lot more resourceful, so that you can help way more many people at the same time. Then you come home and it's like, oh, I need a beer, I gotta have a scotch before I could even move. You know, it's like, because really you're just trying to numb your senses so that you don't feel all this chaos that's going on in your life. And
I'm sure
when
many
you are
people
bringing all that stuff in, it creates so much chaos absolutely everywhere.
I'm sure many people will be able to relate to that. So I'm going to just
Yeah.
bring in one more group today, which is
Mhm.
people who are very intuitive. We're much more comfortable these days about talking about being intuitive, and I'm listening to my intuition. How does that relate with being highly sensitive?
You're probably more in tune. It's interesting because there's so many groups of people who really do use their intuition so much. And believe it or not, entrepreneurs are one of the biggest group. There's been quite a few university studies where they said entrepreneurs just go off their intuition, but your intuition is basically formed by how you use your spirit body and part of your consciousness. And when you relax, you just see things and you feel things completely differently because you're analyzing things on a much greater perspective, basically. So, but there's also the intuitive natures of reactive and responsive when, like, when if you ask a police, like I've heard this, so many policemen have said, well, didn't you feel there was something wrong here and you should have got out of here? And everybody has naturally said yes, but we didn't.
Yep.
But you've got to, that's another good thing about when you start to clear up all this crap that's around you, it's much easier to use your intuition and your instinct. But when you use your intuition and your instinct, it also, you use a lot of your creative nature, which means that you become a heck of a lot happier because it's you doing the creative part of it. It's like, it doesn't matter what job you do. Sometimes, if you get someone to do every job for you, well, there's not much satisfaction in it as much. And you go and do, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's, you make something, and it just gives you joy in life, rather than just going out and buying something. Sometimes when you actually create something, that's the part that really gives us that, the grounding in life to sort of also, we see what's needed rather than wanted. And sometimes we that's how we can break through the barriers and, help people, and even and help ourselves as once at the same time, because that intuition, it is deeply rooted in you, but if we don't use it, we often feel very, vacant in certain parts of our life. So for the people who are highly intuitive, they tend to get a little bit more out of life, but sometimes they're taken advantage of quite a lot too. So it's about making that balance up again.
So, intuition, people who are highly sensitive will tend to be intuitive. Um,
Oh yeah,
yes. But intuition is not exactly, being very intuitive is not exactly the same as being highly sensitive, but they're connected with each other. And intuition is very much
yeah,
connected with our creativity.
absolutely. And the thing is too, when we start to use our spirit a lot more, we tend to want to do things um, that just make the world a better place. Really, you're
Yes.
not you're not just. I mean, sure, we all have to do things to, make money, yeah. But at the same time, we often do things. It's like, well, it's like that I was saying. If you find something that you love to do, then it's not a job. And that's how we find those jobs. We find something that we love to do, and it's we
And
all have we're all wired a bit differently, so we can find those things that are more in our innate nature.
And when we find what we love to do, our intuition really kicks in and we feel much more like, oh, I know what I need to do, or I get the message for what I need to do. So it's nothing like the hard work that it is when you're doing something that you don't love to do. So that all connects up. And then being highly sensitive and having things working well, and we'll talk more about that in a future recording, enables you to function really efficiently so that you don't have to work nearly as hard. So now you're enjoying your work, loving your work, you're being really creative, you're working very efficiently as well, so you're effective. And then we begin to see how all of this picture comes together.
That's exactly right. Because what happens is we basically end up with, I sort of call it functional consciousness, functional spirit, and functional physical. But I mean, it
Functional
gives
being the important word there, we're actually
functional.
functional.
That's the big thing. Like we have functional medicines and all these things like that that work. But what we're talking about is basic componentry that we've all detuned from. So as we tune it back in, man, we've got this basic part of us that just makes life more joy, and we get more out of it, and you have more fun. And like, we, you find the friends who are real. You find, it's
It's simple
just like,
stuff.
It's so
Simple
simple, but
just makes life good.
it is. But it's the simplest things in life that really do make you happy. It's not going out and buying a new car because at the end of the day, it's just another damn car. And then,
Then you want another one
then you
or a
want
better
another
one.
one to try and make yourself happy, and you
Different
got
feature.
1,000 cars there. It doesn't really make you happy. It's just now I've got all this work that I've got to look after. So, but the real simple things in life, they do, that's the part that makes life worth living.
Well, I think that's a really good place to end this particular conversation. And it feels really helpful to me to have some clarity around the similarities and differences, and the specific features of being highly sensitive, oversensitive, hypersensitive, empathic, intuitive, all these different things that people throw around not always knowing. They just have an experience and they've got a name for it, but they don't really know what's going on. And we will talk in another one about what it's actually like to be a highly functioning, highly sensitive person, because I think that's going to be a really interesting topic. So let's leave this one here. Thank you very much, David,
You're welcome.
and we'll be back soon.